Hello and welcome to Board Now's Cult Reviews, Cult TV Reviews, and on this video I will be reviewing the first episode of the new HBO drama series, and it's called Euphoria, and the first episode simply is called The Pilot. So this new HBO show, it's created by Sam Levinson, who was behind the horror movie Assassination Nation, which came out late last year, which I've not seen but I've heard good things about. Looks like it could be fun. So this is his new sort of coming of age, not exactly coming of age, but teen drama. It's said to be heavily based on his own experiences growing up, and it's very much a sort of a Generation X type perspective on growing up and the struggles of adolescence, but particularly in this case, drugs and sex, finding yourself sexually and all the extreme pressures placed on teenagers nowadays. And I'll do a short sort of spoiler-free sort of setup because in this first episode it is mostly set up in introductions to the characters and sort of things happening to them, but not a lot of plot in the first episode. So there's not a lot I can say without going into spoilers. But basically, Sedano plays Ree, a 17-year-old who, at the start of the show, comes out of rehab. She, of course, Sedano people know from the recent Spider-Man movies and also The Greatest Showman, and I think there's a sign that she's really looking to play against type here, really looking to do something a bit different and more challenging. So she plays Ree, as I said, and she gets out of rehab at the start of the show. And immediately through her voiceovers we hear that she has no intentions of staying clean. She's had drug addiction, but she fully intends to get back on the drugs and to essentially fool everyone. I mean, I think the voiceover is there to say that this is her inner thoughts, and that outward she's kind of projecting this certain sort of fake sort of image, that she's saying all the right things, to please, her mum and the people around her. And obviously when she's with her friends, she's probably a bit more open. But she does have this very cynical sort of tone to her. This very, what's the point? The world is doomed sort of tone, and I'm just doomed to be an addict almost, So the sense, and she feels this entrapment sort of thing. So she's obviously the lead character, and but at the same time, there's another girl who's kind of a lead character, and that's Jules, who's played by Hunter Schafer, I'll go with. And so she arrives in town around the time that Rhea gets out of the rehab. And she's this, very timid sort of, but also quite, on the outside appears quite a punky little girl. She rides a bike around town. She's sort of mocked by Jocks, this particular character called Nate, when he passes her in the car. And she's very shy. She's new in town, and she doesn't really know anyone, and she feels very isolated and aloof. And we hear through Riz voiceovers that Jules met this girl called Kat at at summer school essentially, and they sort of bonded, and there was a bit of a thing there between them. And they've sort of kept text contact, but Kat has also drifted away from Jules as well. And that Kat, Jules thinks, they're very much still friends, but Kat, who has her own pressures, has been, sort of pressured into hanging out with the perceived cooler kids, and the more glamorous sort of girls, and has kind of been or made, in a way, peer pressured to move away from Jules, and obviously has contact with her over the phone sometimes, but is drifting away from her and feels that pressure to really put herself out there, sort of thing. So she's another very very awkward, sexually awkward person, let's say, or socially awkward. And it is shown that how a certain type of person, a certain look to a person, or if they don't put themselves out there, and they're not crude, almost, they're not very blasé about their sexuality, how they're sort of shunned from society and put in a box, really. At one point we see Kat at a party, and the guys are basically, being very crude, and they're sort of calling her a prude, and it's almost this sort of thing where Kat is, because they're calling her a prude, and she feels ganged up on, then there's this pressure for Kat to sort of turn the tables and sort of prove that she's actually, and the term used in the scene is slut, so this isn't me using it, but that's the term. So again, it's showing that very that really crude sort of stereotyping and placing in boxes, and in this situation where in the narrow minds of these guys, Kat is either a prude or a slut, sort of thing. And it just shows you this very shallow, very narrow-minded world sort of view. But obviously this first episode is really sort of trying to get across the teen experience, and a certain teen experience. And so essentially, we are building towards a friendship, maybe a relationship between Sedana's character Rhea and also with Jules. They sort of meet at this party, and Kat's also there as well. So I'll talk more about the party when I get into spoilers, which I guess is now. I guess it's time for spoilers, pretty much. Although I will say this show has sparked a lot of controversy in the States. A lot of people have criticised it for being explicit with its sexual content and use of drugs and all the rest of it, and just it's been criticised for going too far. But obviously in other corners it's been praised for being this really bold, boundary pushing sort of teen show that is very authentic to the teen experience. So I'm going to give my thoughts on the first episode anyway. This first season is 8 episodes, by the way, so quite a tight, contained first season, and it's already been commissioned for season 2, I can tell you that. So we'll see how far we get with it. But my overall impressions on this first episode is that I thought it was a promising first episode. There was a lot of good to it, and I think it's set up a lot of potentially good things moving forward. I had 1 or 2 reservations. I thought the voiceover was overused with Rhea's character. At times it was like she was really spelling stuff out for us, especially when she was talking about the other characters. I mean, I get why the voiceover is there. It's her worldview, her experience. And also, I think it's that thing I said a bit earlier about the fact then kind of it's this inner self, this inner sort of truth, and how it's opposite from what she's telling everyone else, sort of thing. So I do get why it's there, and it's effective at times. Certainly, I think the tone of the voice, the very muted, deadpan sort of tones, I think Sedana really nails that stuff. But it's just the fact that I think it is overused. I think 90% of her stuff is through voiceover, and I think sometimes in on TV in dramas you just need to let it play out and to actually see stuff happen to people. So that's one thing which might grow on me. The other is maybe at this point I'm concerned about the characters not being likeable enough, or maybe not having enough to them. It's one thing to have unlikable characters, but it's another to at least make them interesting and to make them stand out. And I mean, obviously the lead characters, I think at the moment, I think there are signs of them doing that. There are signs that these could be really meaty, fleshed out characters who are distinct from one another. I can't really say that about the supporting characters at the moment. I mean, the Nate character, for example. I mean, I think the actor does a good job, and obviously I can see the role of his character. But yeah, if he's going to be with us throughout the show, then I think, yeah, at this point I can't quite see how they're going to make him either more likable or just more relatable, or then there's something a bit more to him. And I think, because there's a scene quite early on with the girls, with a group of girls, one of them's Kat, and she's in their room with them, and it's around the time where they're showing us that Jules, is trying to contact her, trying to hook up with her, having met her with Summer at school. And again, we see Kat being very sort of conscious, self-conscious, and trying to impress these more glamorous, shallow sort of girls. But in that scene, I thought, yeah, there's a lot of potty mouth dialogue, a lot of shallowness going on back and forth. And again, that may well be quite realistic in some ways, but you do need, you do need a bit of contrast, and you need a bit of depth to your characters. So I think those are my two main concerns at the moment. But yeah, I'll get more into the positives as I go through. But one thing which I think it does in the opening moments, which is an interesting point, which I think is something which has been commented on, is the fact that so the voiceover from Rhea tells us then she was born like 3 days after 9/11. And I think that's important because then it sort of clicks through her life from that point to about like 12 or something, and she said, really her memory's a blur. And there's a line about, the world moving fast and the brain sort of freezing, not sort of taking it in. And I think we get the impression then it's this sort of sense of this information age and this information overload, and kind of how it's all happening too fast, and how modern teens are presented with too much information and they're just overwhelmed by it. And I think it's also notable then in one of the shots we see, I can't remember if it was her mother or like just a babysitter or something, but we see her with, a lot of drugs, prescribed drugs, admittedly, but we see her with all these drugs out on the counter, and it's a very visual shot, but I think that's sort of making a point then, then we are sort of in a world of where there's maybe many drugs out there, too many, even, prescribed medical drugs, I think they overdo it a bit sometimes. And so, yeah, it's just making that connection where when these things are out there all the time, it's maybe not surprised when, a girl like Rhea becomes an addict sort of thing. But I think the point about the 9/11 angle and her being born a few days after 9/11 is just that thing about this generation, sort of feeling in a way 9/11 was a turning point for America and maybe for the world, and that ever since 9/11, which obviously we're getting on for 20 years now since for the anniversary. But since 9/11, there's this sense of dread, there's this sense of doom, paranoia, and this sense that the world has never been the same since that date, and that maybe we're all screwed, maybe that was the turning point and there's no going back. And even though, you can debate that back and forth, I mean, from a teen's perspective and someone growing up in that time period, I think you can see how they might feel that and how cynical they could be, and just how they would just throw their hands up in the air and whatever. And I think that's what Zenday's character really captures through her voiceover and through the images, and again she does really nail the sort of deadpan tone, and she's just very reserved and awkward, and she really physically captures the character perfectly. And I think it's sort of a genius bit of casting, because if you see her character in the Spider-Man films, Mary Jane, she's very reserved in those, she's very understated, but she makes her, charming and likable. I think she's great in the Spider-Man films. But in here, it's a nice little tweak where, in some ways, her acting style hasn't changed that much, but they've just tweaked it into a much darker, obviously grounded. I mean, I think Mary Jane, in her own way, is quite realistic. I mean, that's the point of the newer Spider-Man films, is they've gone back to the core. They've gone back to the teen roots. And so actually the teen drama that plays out is quite sort of relatable. But obviously this is a step further into reality. And so Sedana's really good. I think also, I mean, there's several good performances, but Hunter Schafer as Jules, I think, is really good. I think she really shows both sides of the character really well, because as I said, she does have this playful, punky sort of feel to her in the scenes where she's on the bike. She does seem quite rebellious when the boys go past her in the car. But on the other hand, she does have this more fragile, this more tender sort of side, this more nervous side that we see in the second half of the episode. And she plays both sides sort of really well. But yeah, I think I'll comment a little bit on the episode visually, because in that opening scene, it has this really fluid sort of editing sort of style, and this really hypnotic, trippy sort of feel to the visuals. Really potent sort of colour schemes, and again, I think that just captured, the fast-paced nature and the out-of-body experience of Rhea, and yeah, the fluid movement and information of this world, really. So yeah, visually the episode is really impressive. There's a great atmosphere to it. There's some really great use of music. I mean, I can't really tell you every track or the artist. I know Billie English, who is a big up and coming artist right now, who's really impressive. I know she's on the soundtrack, and I mean, she's only like 17 or something, so she's quite fitting that she's on the soundtrack probably, but she's really impressive. But yeah, the music was really good, so I mean, certainly on that level, I can't really fault the episode. As I said, I've sort of stated my couple of issues really, but overall, I think it's a promising episode really, and a promising start to the series. Whether I think it's exploitative, I don't necessarily think it is. Obviously it's not going to be for everyone. I mean, I think there probably are examples of the writer in particular putting stuff on the screen to sort of shock people and to sort of make them think about things. But I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. My bigger concern is that it could just be too blunt, and are we really going to get the characters to root for? And yeah, is it going to have that depth sort of moving forward? But I think it's certainly been a promising sort of a start. So I'll get more into spoilers, and really it's sort of building to this party really, but we get more of Rhea's worldview. We sort of see her, her telling us how to stay clean, and because obviously she has to keep giving clean urine samples, and so she goes through the options. And there's a little bit of humour in that scene because she talks about the prospect of buying fake urine over the internet. And obviously social media and the internet is a big part of the series, and some of the commentary, and she's kind of like, yeah, right, sort of thing. And obviously in the end, she goes to a friend of hers called Lexi, and she asks her if she can use her urine, sort of thing. And there's a bit of tension there because they haven't seen each other for years, but essentially they are sort of best friends, even though they've been distant for many years. They grew up together. So it's an awkward moment when she asks Lexi for her urine, sort of thing, but Lexi agrees. And Lexi has a sister called Cassidy, who we briefly see Rhea talk to at the dinner table. The mother and Cassidy are having dinner, and so there's an interaction there. And again, Cassidy is going to become a bigger character. We see that later at the party. And Rhea also has a male friend who is supportive of her, listens to her, and gives her good advice about staying clean, basically, and saying, this drug thing just isn't the way, sort of thing. Even though he sort of gets high himself, he's obviously not an addict like she is, but he appears to be able to talk to her on her level. So yeah, I mean that's sort of it from Rhea's side, apart from obviously, meeting Jules at the party. So yeah, I guess that'll lead us on to the party, and so I'll skip around a few different characters. So Jules is essentially, we see this side of her, looking for attention, looking to fit in, sort of thing. So she is called to the house of this older man. So essentially, it's like a prostitution type thing, and it's a really awkward, uncomfortable scene, because he has this weird little fetish where he likes her to put her fingers in his mouth, and yeah, so that's one side of it, and they obviously have sex, and yeah, this is obviously, it's one of those where it goes from one thing to the next, where Jules naively goes along thinking, this is the thing to do, this is the way to put myself out there, and just looking for that desperation just to look to fit in, and obviously the fact that Kat hasn't been in contact for a while sort of puts her, puts her out a bit, and she feels very lonely. I mean, we see her with her father. She leaves home, and they have a nice moment, but you get the impression maybe then he's a single parent, and yeah, then maybe they're a bit cut off from one another. But then Jules, tries to contact Kat, who of course is at the party, and as I said, we have the scene with Kat and the boys, which again, it's Kat, sort of acting out or playing up to this role which society is trying to cast her in, and she kind of takes the top off, to prove she's not a prude, but yeah, because she's at the party and kind of all that stuff, she's not there for Jules. But Jules knows about the party, so she decides to go to the party eventually. And one thing leads to another, really. So we have the Nate character, as I said, is this really obnoxious sort of chock. And he has this friend who's a more sensitive sort of guy, and Nate has, he's just broken up with this girl, and she's going to the party as well. She's in the group with Kat and the others who we see earlier, and they're essentially trying to make each other jealous. But we get the impression that Nate is this very shallow, very aggressive, masculine sort of jock, and his friend who we see in the car with him is more sensitive. He's always standing up. When Nate's calling, his ex-girlfriend and that a whore. He's always standing up for her. Saying there's more to her than that. So basically, Nate's ex-girlfriend, whose name I forget now, but she basically seduces this guy at the party, and they're sort of both trying to make each other jealous. He's with another girl, and she kind of drags this guy into the pool with her, and so it's in front of everyone, so it's not just going off to a bedroom to do it. It's basically out in public, out in front of Nate and everyone else, and they essentially start making out in the pool, and says, do you want to have sex with me? So yeah, one thing leads to the other, and Nate sort of catches them in the pool, and he goes nuts, and he goes back inside, and gets really aggressive towards the other guests, and Jules is in there. And And yeah, he spots her and says, you know, what are you looking at? And then things escalate. He gets really hyper and aggressive and demands she tells him who she knows at the party. You know, is anyone there friends with Jules? And obviously, I mean, Kat isn't around, and the others say they don't know her, and you know, this escalates, and Nate really gets in her face and freshens her basically, you know, and sort of is saying, you know, I know people like you looking for attention. And this is when Jules responds, and she essentially, you know, gets a knife out and sort of threatens him and you know, forces him back. But the real shocking point of the scene is that she actually stabs herself in the wrist, you know, so she sort of slits a bit out of her wrist, and it comes out of nowhere. And yeah, it's a really powerful and disturbing scene, and then Nate starts calling her a psycho and all the rest of it. And yeah, so a really haunting, scary sort of scene at the party. And that it's at that point because Rhea sort of witnesses it and sees what's happening, and it's an interesting reaction from her because she sort of, in a way, she sort of has this shrug of the shoulders, and you know, it's like, oh, okay. But I think looking at what happens, it's almost like she's actually approving of it, saying, oh, that was actually quite cool the way she stood up to Nate, and yeah. You know, then she was impressed by the statement and can relate to Jules in a way. So that's when you know, she approaches her and they end up going home together. It's like, do you want to get out of here? It's almost like they're in the same headspace, and there's obviously this bond because you know, Jules is new in town, and Rhea has come out of rehab, so she's back in town. So it's almost like a fresh thing for her. And so they're both, but in different ways, are feeling isolated. And because even though Rhea's at this party, you know, she feels like she doesn't belong there. And it's the same with Jules, sort of thing. In a way, it's through peer pressure that they've both been there, or in the case of Jules, I guess it's because she knows Kat and she knew Kat was going to be there. But so they go off home together, and it's this start of this relationship, which obviously we're going to see more of in the coming episodes. And actually, it's sort of how the episode closes, where they go home and they're in a room and they're being quiet because, you know, obviously not to wake. I'm guessing it'll be. I wasn't really sure whose home they'd gone to, whether it was Jules or Rhea's. But anyway, it's if it's Rhea's, it'll be her mother. If it's Jules, her father, obviously. But yeah, I really like this scene and the music, and it has this very angelic sort of tender sort of tone. Really good use of music again. And so we see, you know, Rhea sort of dressing Jules' wound, and yeah, just attending to her and them having this intimate sort of moment and this connection sort of forming. And I think I'm pretty sure they don't have sex, but you know, they do sort of spend the night together. And that's when it does this kind of typical winding up shot that we see in a lot of TV, where you get the music montage and it basically shows all the characters, and it sort of links them because it goes back to the party, and it sort of sees, you know, couples sleeping together. We see Kat, for example. We see Cassidy, who I'll get onto what happened with her in a moment. but yeah, it's a really well directed, nicely edited close to the episode. And we also find out then, because we see Nate, who's in this big mood, of course, this big huff. We see him go home, and as he's going up the stairs, we see like the family portrait, and we actually see who his father is, and his father is actually the creepy older guy who, you know, slept with Jules earlier. So yeah, no doubt that's going to come back up, but that's going to be something. And I think, you know, maybe that's an indication into Nate's background and maybe why he's as aggressive as he is, you know, having a father like that. So maybe some skeletons to explore there. But yeah, getting back to Cassidy, because we do see her in that scene, and basically, yeah, she's another one who there's this sort of sense of her, because there's pictures of her sort of naked that have linked online, and they're being passed around, and you know, videos and what have you, and there's a sense of her, and again this friend of Nate's is kind of saying, you know, she's really bright, she's really smart, and is kind of saying, yeah, she's nice, she's not like that, she's almost virtuous, and again we see this double side to like a character. So we see Cassidy sitting at the dinner table earlier with her mother, and she does look very sweet and sort of innocent, and then this other side to her. But again, these videos just being passed around, and just, yeah, just how awful this whole culture is, and how things can get out of hand. And obviously, you know, when you are that age, you do make mistakes. But again, I think this show is showing the extreme pressures on these teens, you know, and why maybe they do such inappropriate things, which, you know, previous generations may not have done, just because there wasn't the pressure on them to do that. And obviously there wasn't the outlet, you know, the fact that there is, you know, the World Wide Web and all the things we have on it, social media sites and what have you. It has really changed the game. But again, we sort of see them really, those videos and the pictures, they're not really who Cassidy is. She is actually, you know, a nice, sensitive girl, a bright girl. And so, but again, we see how reputations can be formed based on such things. But what essentially happens is that, you know, Nate's friend is standing up for her, saying, no, she's better than that. Even when he sees the stuff, he still defends her, and, you know, you get the impression that he likes her. So they're sort of together at the party, and they're chatting, and they do essentially hook up, but I forget the character's name actually, but he starts getting rough essentially. You know, he does kind of put his hand around her throat as they're starting to have sex, and then we freeze frame, and we get the voiceover from Rhea, and it's kind of this subversion where it makes you think then there's going to be a rape scene, and she says actually that doesn't happen, but you know, so often these things do end up in rape or attempted rape. And then she's giving out all these statistics about online stuff, and but yeah, it's just that thing, that subversion, and this very sort of cynical attitude. And then we cut back to the scene a minute later where we see a lot of he does break it up when she's freaked out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you'd be into that." And she says, "No, I'm not," sort of thing. And she's still sweet about it. I mean, she calms down, and they still get together. Not that they should necessarily, but she is nice about it, and it's not. Once he explains himself and apologizes, it's not a massive thing. But I think it's that sense, then there's pressure on him, and this is something I can relate to, when you're maybe a shyer guy or a more sensitive guy in this group of very hyper masculine guys, and they're all sex talk, this and that, and I think a lot of it is bravado and probably not true, but there's this atmosphere, and I think sometimes, again, what the show is about, if you're the odd one out, there's this pressure on you to sort of comply, to conform in some way. So maybe some of that has rubbed off on this character, and that's why he goes in aggressively when they start having sex. And on the other hand, I think Cassidy feels the pressure to hook up with a guy at the party, but at least it's the nicer guy, let's say, and so they do sleep together, so we cut to them at the end. But yeah, obviously we're going to explore their relationship more. So yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. I did think it was a promising start. I thought the cast were good. Visually, it was really impressive. Good use of atmosphere and music, and yeah, I think it really got across the worldview of the lead character, and was powerful and shocking. Made you think about things. Again, there's a debate whether it's exploitative, and there's a concern that maybe the characters won't be likable enough or have that depth. And I do worry, they might fall into stereotypes. To a certain extent, I understand how these are realistic characters. I can see that. But I think within a TV context, you do need that slightness of touch, that light hand. You can still go in heavy, you can still have the darker elements and the raw elements, but I think you do need that mixture, that light and dark, and you do need characters you can root for, or even if they're awful characters, nasty characters, they can have that relatability or that depth, which I think this show is going for, but we'll see. I mean, only one or two minor concerns or maybe questions, but I thought it was a strong first episode mostly, and looks quite promising. And only 8 episodes in the first season, so that's a good number, I think, to start off with. So yes, I will do the whole of the first series. So this is episode 1, and I'll do these weekly. So I'll be back with a review of episode 2 around about the same time next week. And just to promote something else on the channel this week, which is starting up, and that is that I will be reviewing the start of Glow Season 3, the Netflix show, which is, the the third season starts this week and will be uploaded. Starts on Friday, so I should have my first review up on Friday or early Saturday, but I'll try and get it up on Friday on the day. And with the Netflix shows, I space out the reviews, but again, I'm guessing there will be 8 or 10 episodes in that, so yeah, I'll do it over a certain amount of days, maybe 3 or 4 episodes per week, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm really looking forward to Glow. I really loved the first 2 seasons. I thought season 2 was even better, but So I'm excited for Glow. It's one of those returning shows I look forward to. And yeah, I'm pleased to be saying I'll be reviewing it on the channel. So look out for the Glow reviews. But yeah, this has been Euphoria, the first episode, the first review. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you thought of the episode. What you think about the prospects moving forward and all that. Like and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.